email, but I'll be going into the dealing with the Congress, the White House, and a bunch of stuff this next week. I'm over here on the East Coast right now on the road, and I'll be out here in North Carolina in these areas, and we're going to have several meetings coming up, and one in Wilmington, one in Raleigh, North Carolina, for those that might need to listen. But we're also going into different areas of Washington, D.C. on July the 3rd. We'll have a meeting there, and I'll be going into dealing with that same day earlier before the meeting with the White House, Congress, the Supreme Court, and several places. As you know, and as the listeners might have known, many people on the show, is that I just got back from 17 days of the Gulf of Mexico tour.
Did you smite something? Did you smite the Gulf of Mexico?
Yes. I took the cedar staff, Daniel, and I struck the Gulf of Mexico in 3 places, the Atlantic Ocean and the Mississippi River on June the 3rd. A prophecy the Lord had given me many years back here was a prophecy on, and he said this, and so the listeners can know why the Mississippi River is spilling over, and this was a prophecy even last year. I talked about the floods that would happen this year as the Lord spoke that to me, and that was I went down to New Orleans, and I went to the Mississippi and struck it there, but the prophecy was this, is that he said, "My son, just as the sins of America have spilled upon the land, so shall I spill the Mississippi upon America and upon the land." And he said to strike the Mississippi, and that it would spill over. Well, that's what happened. Whether people with all those things or not, it's just part of what is biblically taught in the Bible about being obedient to the call and what God says to do. And so I did that by obedience, and it's not an act of, well, I like to see the flooding and see people get destroyed their homes. No, it's not that at all. He's dealing with the sins of the land of America, and now that the sins have now reached the fulfillment of into the heavens, and God is just bringing judgment, not just as He has upon the earth, but especially in America right now, the hour we're living in. And the times we're living in.
Matthew, let me ask you: Did God tell you any reason for the 7,000 lightning strikes on California, which is unheard of in any meteorological sense?
He did, Daniel. As some of the prophecies the Lord had spoke about, and we can back up just for a minute to answer that question real quick about those lightning strikes, and that is that. In the vision about the lightning strike in the earth, that He would send a strike upon the nations, as He did Kansas City, that fuel depot that happened here about I guess it's been about a month now, or three or 4 weeks ago. The lightning bolt came out of the heavens and struck that fuel petroleum depot and blew up that whole fuel tank, and that was part of that pending judgment vision that I wrote about in February 21st. But many years ago, the Lord spoke to me. He said, "I will break down America by its weather patterns that I would cause upon it, earthquakes, tornadoes, floods, even volcanoes," and lightning strikes that came out was part of the prophecy about the fires that I spoke about even last year that would happen this year, about massive fires in America, and those thousands of fires and the, like you said, 840 some odd lightning strikes that came out of California. That's very, very important prophecy that is being fulfilled right there. At the same time, if the listeners would remember this, and I'm sure you do, Daniel, yourself, and that was the 600 earthquakes in 10 days off the coast of Oregon. While I was there,
earthquake swarm.
Just before that, I struck off the coast of Oregon. They had those 600 earthquakes off the coast of Oregon here about a couple months back, and they can't explain why it was happening.
Right.
So it's a very important understanding. Just as the listeners need to know this part, which you're probably well aware of this also, Daniel, and that is the Great Lakes. The Lord spoke to me months back here about the volcano being in Lake. First He said that there's a volcano up there in Lake Erie, and I said, "In Lake Erie? Where in, you mean near in Cleveland there, or what?" And he said, "My son, it's in the water, the volcano." I didn't know it was in the water until He spoke that, and He gave me the vision about the tornado that came upon the water. I was taken up above in a vision, looking down through the funnel of this tornado, and I saw orange lava down in the water as it opened up. and he had said there's a volcano there. Well, months back here, the Lord gave me this phone number, and he said, call this number. And I said, who is it? He said, call this number. Well, this number was the Alaskan Research Activity Laboratory in Alaska for volcano and earthquake activity.
Really?
And I got a hold of some doctor scientist lady that answered the phone, and she wanted to know how I got this number. It was an inside number, and she wanted to know how I got the phone number. And I told her how. And I told her, I said, look, lady, I just want you to hear me for a minute. There's a fault line going through Laguna Beach that you guys know nothing about. That's a crack that goes out to the ocean, and there's a volcano in Lake Erie. Of course,
wow.
She didn't want to acknowledge a lot of this, but I told her, I said, write the number down. I don't care if you can go get a cup of coffee with it, but you'll know when this happens. Now, as a result of that, if you've been watching the news and everybody's been listening here, in about the last month or so, the Great Lakes, the waters have been heating up and have been evaporating, and they don't know why it's been heating up and evaporating.
Right.
Well, it's because the volcano's heating up.
Wow.
So
you got the phone number. How did you get that number? Was it written down? Did somebody call you with it? It just came to you?
It was just through a revelation of word of knowledge of God. It's like as if I'm speaking. He gave me this number, and I started to write it down, and I didn't know what it was all about, and I called it and didn't even know where it was. Didn't know anything about it. He just said, call this number. And then he had told me to tell this person these very words, so I did, and I'll be back in touch with them again now that the waters are heating up. But there's so much going on. Just like talking about the two American political assassinations that are going to take place very soon. Like we talked about ever since 2002 about the next president would be a Democrat and be assassinated and never finish their term. The Middle East assassination that's going to happen very, very soon.
Yeah.
The French president, remember I talked about the French president? I wrote about it last November 30th, talked about assassination on this French president, that the French wine's going to spill. It's in the letters. It's on the website. And in there, as you know, last week, this Shakarsky guy, Nicholas Shakarsky, well, there was an explosion, and it was actually almost upon Omar and him, which I talked about Omar and him and Bush and this French president guy and that other guy, Bush or whatever his name is from Syria.
Yeah.
I believe those guys they're going to get knocked. It's going to be a time, and they're going to get knocked off, and it's coming. It's a matter of time, but it's going to happen. Well,
Matthew,
they tried to clip that old boy the other day.
Hey, Matthew, let me ask you something. You did a seminar with Benjamin Baruch, did you not?
I was out there on May 31st in conference with Vincent Xavier, and I guess Benjamin Baruch was there, yes.
Yeah. Is any of your visions, do you know if Benjamin Baruch, from where he is from, his location, remotely from you, without contacting you, has he confirmed or has he had any of the same visions or prophecies as you?
I don't know what Benjamin's had at all. I don't talk to him about those kinds of things. He did share some things in the conference, and I know he mentioned many things in that conference that I have been speaking about for years. And where he got it, I'm not sure whether God told it to him personally, whether he was just reading it. I don't know. I know that he's had some things in his own heart that God had him share. But as far as the actual personal level of talking about any of that on a personal level, no, I mean, I don't know anything about that at all as far as that goes.
By the way, just an aside, our